Well, hey there, you guys. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I am your host, Janine Alley, and you are listening to Becoming the CEO of Your Life Today. And I am so excited about this episode and this content because it has made such an impact in my life. So I'm going to be talking today about how to move from force to flow and how important and impactful this is going to be in your life, because you are going to realize and you are going to be able to see that there is an abundance of ease that you have not been accessing. When things feel easy and it feels like you are just the conduit of the message to flow through you. I've got a really exciting example from this week that I'm going to share with you in just a minute about what I mean about this. So hang with me for a second, but I know you're not in this state, or I used to not be in this state, I should say, when I used to try and sit down to work and I would feel like I was forcing things and it would just take me forever. And I felt like there were times when I would sit down to create content for writing a social media post or something, or to batch, a week's worth of social media or something, that I wanted it to take me an hour. And it ended up taking me 3 hours or more. And I felt like the content even wasn't very good at that point. So it kind of feels like often when you're in this space that you're kind of doing this dance. You're telling yourself you should create. You've blocked out the time to create. And now is the time to create it. But it feels like your voice is blocked. It's not even that you don't want to, because you do have that desire to do it. But it feels like the message isn't coming through, and it feels kind of like a slog in order to access it. And when we're in this space, sometimes we start to get in our heads about it and we start second guessing our mission, or second guessing what we're doing. And this is really frustrating because you do have something really important to share with the world, and you're smart. And it's just like, why can't I access this? And like I said, it feels like that voice is blocked. Your inner wisdom is blocked. That thing that you feel in your heart when you feel relaxed and you're excited about what it is that you're doing. Like when you're in the shower, you're driving your car and you're like, oh, I just want to say this. I want to remember this. And then you actually get a piece of paper in your hand and a pen and it leaves you. I don't know if that happens to any of you, but I know for a while I was even worried about how the message was going to be received, right? I get in my head about, that guy from high school listening to my message, or a sister-in-law who's going to listen to or read the content that I created. And I couldn't get past that. And I ended up feeling kind of discouraged for a while, like, well, maybe I'm not on the right track with this. And I didn't want to work on the weekends, and I didn't really see another option. But I want to tell you today, if you're feeling any of these things, I just shared a myriad of symptoms and examples of this. It doesn't need to be this way. There is a much easier way to get yourself into a state of flow where things are much easier. Just like the way that I'm speaking to you right now. I'm excited. I'm thinking about you. I am speaking the truth of my heart today, and it feels amazing. So there is this other option when this creation process feels so good. You're standing in your power. You're excited about changing people's lives. And what I'm going to tell you today is that it starts with specific routines. I noticed for myself, before I was able to do this more consistently, intentionally, I was in this state when I was coaching people where I wasn't really concerned about anybody else except for that one person that I was helping and that I was coaching. And I was in this place where I felt amazing. And I knew that I was really connected, and I was saying the things that I felt like needed to be said, not because I wanted to say them, but because I was connected to God. I was connected to my mission, and I was reaching people in that way. And it feels so good when you're in that space. So how do you get there? I know you want to get there. So how do you get there? So I'm going to tell you right up front, I'm going to start with a little caveat here that this isn't something that will initially make sense to you, because this definitely goes against the current of our culture. And it might feel really counterintuitive to the way that we've been taught to do business and the way that things have to be. And I also want to tell you, you might not want to do this. There was a lot of resistance for me in the beginning, but once I realized, if I do the work up front, then the creation process and what I'm doing actually is much easier than not doing the work up front and not the things that I'm going to tell you today. And then the actual creation process ended up being like this forced experience, and it was really difficult. And like I said, I kind of came up with what I felt like was subpar work for me. And I wasn't really speaking the truth of my heart. I wasn't able to access that. And I was just kind of maybe hitting around it, but not really giving people what I felt like I really wanted to say. So first, let me explain the reason why you can't access your message or your voice, or that your voice feels blocked, is because your sympathetic nervous system is activated. And I've done podcast episodes about this before. So I'm going to link for you in the show notes more information about this. So the sympathetic nervous system is in charge of your fight, flight, or freeze response. And we get into this space when we feel threatened, right? Our shackles go up. We start looking around for the danger, right? And we do this because when we're creating content, when we're putting our message out in the world, we're taking a risk, right? There could be consequences to doing that we don't like, right? We could get rejected. We're inviting the haters to speak whatever is on their mind if they don't like what we're saying, or they don't like us for whatever reason, or maybe nobody's paying attention and we feel dumb. Like, all of these things are reasons why we end up subconsciously feeling threatened, right? And we understand this, but feeling this is on a different level, right? Our sympathetic response fires up. And so our subconscious is like, okay, we're going to stay in the cave and we're going to play small. And this is why we can't access that truth, is because when we access the truth, we're playing a bigger game, right? We are going to be polarizing. We might even offend people with our opinion, right? So your sympathetic nervous system is in charge of your survival. And the problem with this is it doesn't know the difference between an actual tiger, right, which is why it's there, right? We're getting chased by something that could potentially be harmful to us. This is when we need the sympathetic nervous system to activate, right? Or a perceived threat, which is what's going on when we put our content out into the world. We're actually not going to die from this experience, most likely, right? But it feels like it sometimes. So, but the response is the same, right? We don't want to deactivate the sympathetic nervous system altogether because we need it sometimes, right? But we need to learn how to soothe and settle our nerves when there is no tiger. So until you move out of that survival state and address your nervous system, you will be forcing. You will be trying to create content kind of against your own will. So before I connected the dots with this, I was trying to coach myself out of this. So if you're familiar with this, which I'm sure a lot of you are, you're going to be trying to work models and pay attention to your mindset and think intentional thoughts, but it won't work. You actually won't believe those thoughts that you want to believe or that you want to think intentionally until your nervous system is taken care of and it feels soothed and settled. So let me give you a story about this from my own life. So this last week, actually on Wednesday, I had on my calendar to do that I was going to create 5 social media posts for that day. And I sat down in the morning and I could tell that my nervous system needed some love. I was just kind of agitated. I know at this point what this feels like. I feel anxiety. I feel kind of irritable. And I feel, like I said, if I was going to sit down to write, it would have been really forced. So instead of sitting down and having it be a struggle, I'm like, okay, I know that I need to take care of this first. So I did yoga. I listened to my creative writing meditation with Amy. She was on the podcast last week. If you missed her, go back and listen to it, which is fire. And it always gets me in the right headspace. And I trusted that the message would come through. This is the key. And I'm going to talk about this in just a second, but who doesn't love to be in flow? I love to be in flow. And when we're in flow, like I said, things feel so much more natural. They feel so much easier to access, right? Who doesn't love that, right? So I did the work to regulate my nervous system, and then I went about my day. I wasn't able to write in the morning. I had a chiropractor appointment. I coached for the nonprofit that I worked for. When I got home, I had to take my dog to the groomers. Unexpected things happened in the afternoon with one of my kids, so I was present for that. And by 5:30 at night, I came back into my office, or I don't know if I came back into my office, but I was in my office and I hadn't written any posts, but I wasn't upset about it. I knew I was teaching yoga at 7:15 and I also needed to make dinner, but I decided in that moment, I'm like, just sit down and write and let's just see what comes through because I was feeling good. And in 12 minutes, I happened to look at the clock when I sat down on this chair behind me in my office and I had my notepad and my pen. I took a look at the time and 12 minutes later, I had 7 posts written. So these ideas were just tumbling out of my head. I was super excited about the content that was coming through. And I have to say that the posts end up being fire. Like they end up being really, really good. And I was really excited about what I was going to share this next week. And I wouldn't have been in that space in the morning. But what I want to tell you is when you do the work to get yourself into that space of feeling good, whatever it takes for you to feel good, the content is not only easier to access, but it just flows and it flows freely and it flows abundantly. And like I said, 7 posts in 12 minutes is like a miracle for me. I do not write like that, but my pen just kept moving on my paper. I'm like, oh, I can talk about this and I can talk about this. So listen, I really want you to hear me say this part. You can do the same things that I just mentioned with my yoga class and maybe even a meditation. You might even be able to get yourself to sit still for a minute and not have the same outcomes that I did because it comes down to self-trust. You have to have this connection to yourself in order to get a result like that. It comes down to accessing the energy of surrender, which I told you, you're not going to like. I knew I could get myself into a space of ease. I knew that. That is trust. I knew the ideas would come through. That is trust. And I used to do yoga with a really specific agenda. I did it to regulate my nervous system intentionally. And even my yoga practice itself was very forced. I approached it in the same way that I approached everything else, with a formulaic and forced approach. Just like, this is what's on my list and this is what we're going to do. And this does the opposite of what it is that we want, right? We're still forcing, we're still resisting instead of staying open, right? When we force, we close. So self-trust really does boil down to trust. You are all in on you and what you are capable of and what you know and who you are and your ability to figure things out and feel your emotions and surrender to the process, not the agenda, but the process and the way it actually unfolds, not the way that you think it should. And you might need to go back, hit your back 30-second button on your podcast if you need to listen to that one more time. Trust is allowing, trust is surrendering to life and to your experience as you live it and as you feel it, staying curious and letting go of the outcome, or like I said, the way that you think it should unfold, knowing that your internal state is going to shift, but you're not exactly sure when. And it's okay because you're here for it, right? Sometimes it feels like thrashing around, like a protest, like a battle, right? And you got to allow that to happen too. You're not doing it wrong if that's what's coming up. And I will say here, this is not procrastination. This is not making excuses for yourself. It is an intentional process or a routine that you incorporate into your life that ultimately makes your life easier. It is work, but it's work up front, right? And it makes things so much easier than forcing, for sure, which is the work on the back end. So I've been working with one of my clients who is a fantastic student, and like all of you are. I know that you guys are like this. I was like this too. And she is amazing. I'm trying to teach her that it is less about what she reads or even what I say or what she studies. But right now it's about learning how to access that inner wisdom. Her inner wisdom should have the final say, just like for all of you. Your inner wisdom needs to have the final say. Don't get me wrong with this. It is important to learn from other people, but not at the expense of our own inner knowing. And oftentimes what I'm finding with people is there is kind of this ranking system. You know, the things that we learn from other people kind of trump our own inner wisdom, our own inner knowing, and it needs to be at least equal, if not the opposite of that, where, like I said, your inner wisdom has the final say. And this is a different approach to life. There is a stillness or a peace or a quietness that is required to understand what is going on and what you really need. And there has to be this confidence or that conviction that I talk about a lot on the podcast that helps you to dictate what you add in or what you bring into your life and what you take away. And it helps you, this whole process helps you to have your own back when it feels really uncomfortable to advocate for yourself. I know how controversial this is. In fact, there might even be some podcasts on my podcast that I have created about keeping your word to yourself and getting yourself to show up when you say you're going to show up. There is for sure value in that, but there is more value in showing up and then listening. It's a partnership between your message and your highest self. You can't access your highest self and you can't access your message when your nervous system thinks there's a tiger. When you're in that state of fight, flight, or freeze, and you are just reacting to whatever is there, you can't, it doesn't matter how many times you try to think an intentional thought, it will not feel true to you. And that is what it's all about. That is what being empowered is feeling into that space where you take a stand. This is my stand. This is what I stand for. This is what I believe, and this is what I'm going to say. And being in that power instead of like, I don't know if this is going to land. I'm afraid that guy from high school is going to listen to this. Okay. This is not being forced. It's connecting to yourself on such a deep level. You nurture yourself to let the message come through the way that it's meant to. It's loving yourself along the way and really focusing on feeling good and addressing what needs to be taken care of for the message to really flow and to be easy and for you to feel, like I said, empowered. That empowerment is truly where the magic happens. That state of being empowered is, of course, powerful, right? It's what makes you magnetic. It's where people are interested in listening and excited about what you're doing. They're like craning their necks around like, oh, what's going on over there? Right? It's like the guy at Costco who is doing this amazing demonstration and everybody is flocking over to see what is going on. They're like, man, I'll have what he's having, right? I want some of that, right? That is the energy of empowerment. And when you're in that state is the state where you want to create. And that's where things just flow. So I know this is what you want. So listen to this one a couple times if you need to, because identifying when your sympathetic nervous system is activated is important. And then knowing the steps to be able to soothe and settle your nerves so that you can get yourself into a state of flow is so key. And this is what I can help you do if you're interested. I have something really special for you this week. This is going to be kind of the thing for a little while. I'd love some feedback actually on it. If you are interested in finding out more, I actually have a 20-minute masterclass for you. You can just go over to JanineAlley.com/webinar and watch it. It's on demand. It is amazing. So go ahead and head over there before I take it down. It's going to be located at JanineAlley.com/webinar in order to see it. All right, you guys, that's what I have for you today. If you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, please subscribe, share, rate, and review the podcast so it makes the podcast easier for other people to find. And that's it. I hope you guys have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your week, and we'll talk to you guys soon. We'll see ya. Take care. Bye-bye.